I could have pretended to be surprised when he gave me some flimsy excuse for leaving today, but I already knew the truth. John and Rachel thought they were clever, thought they had me fooled. But what they failed to realize was that I was never just an observer in this game. I had been patient, waiting, watching. But today, that patience was gone. The upcoming vacation with my friends was just around the corner, and I could already picture how incredible it would be. With my credit card unlocking endless possibilities, everything was set for a perfect getaway. Everything, except for one thing: John. Lately, he'd been acting strange. Late-night phone calls, hushed conversations with Rachel, the nervous energy whenever he was home. It all felt off, like pieces of a puzzle forming a picture I wasn't supposed to see. Did he really think I wouldn't notice? Please. The more I watched, the clearer it became. Something was being planned behind my back. Let them enjoy their little trip. They had no idea there was another player in the game, waiting in the shadows. And when the time was right, I would flip the board and take control. On my terms. My name is Emma Davis, and I'm 36 years old. I live in the same house with John, my husband, and we've been together for many years. My story began after high school, when I immediately plunged into work, eager to achieve something significant. With experience and recommendations from my superiors, I earned several important certifications that opened up career opportunities for me. My rise in the company was swift. By 23, I had already landed a management position, which was a huge achievement for me, as I was the youngest person ever to hold that role. Though it was just a managerial position, it meant a lot to me. With quiet determination, I aimed to climb the career ladder and one day lead a department. Over time, the company welcomed new faces, and one of them was John. Although he was older than me, I outranked him in the company. My job was to train John and a few other newcomers, and from then on, our paths began to cross. John often admired my career growth and experience, and his attention toward me became more evident. At first, I hesitated, but gradually I found myself falling for him. I began to notice John's careless habits, which hadn't been so apparent before. At first, they alarmed me, but over time, I decided that perhaps this was his way of revealing his true self to me, showing that he trusted me and no longer hid behind a mask of perfection. Oddly enough, I began to like these changes. They made him seem more real, more alive, and I tried not to give too much thought to these little details, letting go of my worries. When John proposed to me, I didn't hesitate to say yes. It was time to talk about our future, and in that conversation, John was surprisingly candid. "I'd like you to be a housewife," he said, as if this was the best possible destiny for me. He wanted to work and earn money, while I would take care of the home and our household, the perfect balance in his mind. He provides comfort in his eyes. This was an ideal arrangement. John dreamed of a family, a house of our own, and a wedding that he saw as the start of our new life together. His plan was strict and clear. First the wedding, then buying a house, and then children. As I listened, I politely nodded and agreed that his sequence of actions seemed reasonable, but inside, doubts were growing. John, does that really sound like the life I want? I had always envisioned more for myself. I knew my worth and the potential I had, and I wasn't sure I could just take a step back and let my entire life revolve around managing a household. His plan didn't quite align with my aspirations. I loved him, of course, but I didn't want to give up the progress I had made in my career. Yet, the reality was that this was where I found myself, on the edge of a decision that could change everything. I was torn. Would I follow John's vision for our life, or would I push forward with my own? Carefully listen to me, but we need to consider the financial side of things, especially how it will affect our savings. Also, I don't plan to quit my job even when we have children. We can make our work schedules more flexible and share responsibilities evenly. John listened attentively, but I could see that he was troubled by the fact that I earned more than he did. He dreamed of owning a house, and his desire to speed up the process suggested that he didn't fully grasp the potential challenges. I tried to calm him, pointing out that buying a house right after the wedding could be difficult. Let's focus on organizing the wedding, and we can buy a house a little later. Besides, we need to figure out how we'll manage finances if I continue working, I suggested. John sighed, but agreed. There was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but he understood that without my income, our plans could be at risk. I proposed the idea not only for financial reasons, but also because I didn't want to leave my job. Deep down, I feared that if I gave in too easily, John might continue to push his expectations on me. During our engagement, we hosted a small party for both families. Rachel, John's sister, was away and couldn't attend, but I met her for the first time at our wedding. That moment is etched in my memory. Rachel burst into the preparation room without knocking. With a smirking glance, she said, "Well, this is John's choice. A bit simpler than his ex, but she'll do." Her sharpness took me aback. I tried to remain light and responded, "I'm Emma. It's nice to meet you." But inside, I was fuming at her brazen attitude. "Oh yeah, I'm Rachel, your new sister-in-law. Straightforwardness is a family trait," she added, before leaving the room without saying goodbye. That first encounter left a bitter taste. She was clearly someone who wouldn't be easy to get along with. Later, I met her husband, who fortunately turned out to be much more composed and reasonable. Unlike Rachel, he gave off a calm and measured vibe, which was a relief to me. The wedding itself went off beautifully and smoothly, just as we had planned. John and I finally bought a house that we both loved. However, from the moment we moved in, life seemed to speed up, and I threw myself into work, determined not to miss any opportunity for professional growth. One day, while I was absorbed in my routine, there was an unexpected knock at the door. I asked John to answer it, thinking it wasn't anything important. Soon, I heard laughter in a familiar voice. It was Rachel. She had decided to drop by unannounced. "Emma, hey, look at John. What a big house he has. It's really great for him," Rachel commented with a smirk, settling comfortably on the couch, as if she were at home. There was a slight sting in her tone, but I held my tongue. "After all, he's my little brother," she continued proudly, glancing around. Meanwhile, I was lost in thoughts of how much I had worked to make this house ours. But John seemed content to let his sister believe that he had provided everything himself. He acted as if the house was entirely his. Rachel was clearly misled, and John wasn't in any hurry to correct that impression. His behavior made me doubt his sincerity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the house we lived in was the result of our combined efforts. I had contributed a significant portion of the down payment and continued to pay the mortgage, even though John insisted that only his name should appear on the ownership papers. In the end, I agreed, thinking that since we were a family now, there was no need to get hung up on such formalities. But now, watching him brag in front of his sister, a wave of resentment surged through me. I decided not to make a scene, though it wasn't easy to hold back. Choosing not to escalate the situation, I offered John and his sister some snacks. "Here are a few treats," I said with forced lightness in my voice. John has been carefully listening to me, but we need to consider the financial side of things, especially how it will affect our savings. Also, I don't plan to quit my job even when we have children, I suggested. John sighed, but agreed. There was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but he understood that without my income, our plans could be at risk. I proposed the idea not only for financial reasons, but also because I didn't want to leave my job. Deep down, I feared that if I gave in too easily, John might continue to push his expectations on me. During our engagement, we hosted a small party for both families. Rachel, John's sister, was away and couldn't attend, but I met her for the first time at our wedding to get along with. Later, I met her husband, who fortunately turned out to be much more composed and reasonable. Unlike Rachel, he gave off a calm and measured vibe, which was a relief to me. The wedding itself went off beautifully and smoothly, just as we had planned. John and I finally bought a house that we both loved. However, from the moment we moved in, life seemed to speed up, and I threw myself into work, determined not to miss any opportunity for professional growth. One day, while I was absorbed in my routine, there was an unexpected knock at the door. I asked John to answer it, thinking it wasn't anything important. Soon, I heard laughter in a familiar voice. It was Rachel. She had decided to drop by unannounced. "Emma, hey, look at John. What a big house he has. It's really great for him," Rachel commented with a smirk, settling comfortably on the couch as if she were at home. There was a slight sting in her tone, but I held my tongue. "After all, he's my little brother," she continued proudly, glancing around. Meanwhile, I was lost in thoughts of how much I had worked to make this house ours, but John seemed content to let his sister believe that he had provided everything himself. He acted as if the house was entirely his. Rachel was clearly misled, and John wasn't in any hurry to correct that impression. His behavior made me doubt his sincerity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the house we lived in was the result of our combined efforts. I had contributed a significant portion of the down payment and continued to pay the mortgage, even though John insisted that only his name should appear on the ownership papers. In the end, I agreed, thinking that since we were a family now, there was no need to get hung up on such formalities. But now, watching him brag in front of his sister, a wave of resentment surged through me. I decided not to make a scene, though it wasn't easy to hold back. Choosing not to escalate the situation, I offered John and his sister some snacks. "Here are a few treats," I said with forced lightness in my voice. John has been so content with the way things were, seemingly without any concern for the effort I had put into building our life together. It was frustrating, watching him pretend as though this house, this life we had, was entirely his accomplishment made me question everything. His dismissive attitude toward my contribution to our home made me feel invisible, as though my sacrifices didn't matter. But rather than confronting him then and there, I held back, pushing my feelings aside, determined to keep the peace, at least for now. It wasn't the easiest thing to do, especially with Rachel's smug comments adding fuel to the fire. I wondered, though, how long I could maintain this facade of calm before the truth came crashing down. I had given everything to build this life, and I wouldn't let anyone, least of all John, take credit for it all without a fight. Was not going in the direction I had hoped. His resentment was clear, and I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. "I can't control why you haven't been promoted," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. His frustration was palpable, and it hurt more than I cared to admit. "You always seem to be getting ahead while I'm stuck," John continued, his voice rising with each word. His eyes, once warm and supportive, now looked cold and distant. "It's like you're more focused on your career than us, Emma. I've always supported you, but this is getting out of hand." I stood there, trying to absorb what he was saying. It was like a punch to the gut. I had worked so hard to get to this point, to make something of myself, and yet, here I was, being made to feel guilty for it. My excitement for my promotion, something I had worked tirelessly for, was slowly slipping away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of disappointment. "John, this is important to me," I said, my voice softer now. "I've worked for years to get to this point. I want to continue growing in my career. I can't just put my dreams on hold." He crossed his arms, pacing back and forth in frustration. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just about your career. It's about us, about what we've built together. But every time you get something, it feels like I'm being left behind." His words stung, but I tried to remain composed. "I'm not leaving you behind, John. I want us to have a future together, but I also need to pursue my own goals. We can do both, but I can't keep sacrificing my dreams for you." John stopped pacing and looked at me, his expression a mix of anger and hurt. "You say that, but you've been so focused on yourself that it feels like I'm invisible. You've always been moving forward, and I'm just here." I could see it now. His words weren't just about my career. They were about a deeper feeling of inadequacy, of being overshadowed. I felt a pang of guilt, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't keep dimming my light for him. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, the words coming out quietly. "But I can't stop what I'm doing. I've worked hard for this, and I won't apologize for it." His eyes softened for a moment, but the tension in the room was still thick. "I don't want you to stop, Emma. I just want us to be on the same page. But it feels like you're choosing your career over our life together." I sighed, realizing that there was no easy answer to this. "I'm not choosing one over the other, John. But I need you to understand that my career is part of who I am. It's not something I can just walk away from." There was silence between us, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. I could see the conflict in John's eyes, the mix of love and frustration, but I also knew that I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. We had reached a crossroads, and it was clear that we needed to figure out how to navigate this new chapter together. "I'll try to understand," John finally said, his voice softer. "But you need to understand that it's hard for me to watch you keep moving forward when I feel stuck." "I get it, John," I replied, my voice steady now. "But I need you to support me, not hold me back. We're in this together, but I can't do it alone." The room felt heavy, but at least we were talking. We both had our dreams, and we both had to figure out how to balance them. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all John, make me feel guilty for wanting to succeed. I had worked too hard to let that happen, wasn't going in the direction I had hoped. His frustration was evident, and I could feel the underlying resentment in his words. "I can't control why you haven't been promoted," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady, but his response hit me harder than I anticipated. "You always seem to be moving forward while I'm stuck," John said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "It's like you don't even consider us as a team anymore, Emma. I've been trying to support you, but what about me?" His words stung. I had always believed we were working toward a future together, but now it felt like my accomplishments were making him feel smaller, like they were a threat to what we had built. I had never imagined that my success would create a rift between us, but here it was, looming over our conversation. "I'm not leaving you behind, John," I said, my voice quieter now. "I've always wanted us to succeed together, but I can't give up on my career just to make you feel better." John shook his head in frustration. "It's not just about your career, Emma. It's about balance. You're always focused on moving up, but I'm here, feeling like I'm stuck in the same place. You're not seeing how I feel. I've supported you, but now I'm feeling left behind." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had never intended to leave him behind. All I wanted was to build something for us, something that we could both be proud of. But it seemed that every step I took forward was pulling us further apart. "I don't know what to say, John," I said, struggling to find the right words. "I'm trying to work for both of us, to give us the life we've talked about. But it feels like no matter how much I achieve, it's never enough." "I just wanted us to have a family, Emma," he said, his voice dropping. "But it's like you're choosing your career over us, over me." I took a step closer, trying to close the distance between us. "I haven't chosen anything over you. I'm doing this because I believe in our future. But I can't stop moving forward just because you're feeling stuck." John turned away, his face clouded with frustration. I could see the pain in his eyes, the feeling of being overlooked. I had worked so hard to get to this point, but now it seemed that my success had become a burden rather than a celebration. "Maybe I should just give up on my dreams," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Maybe that would make you feel better." "But that's not who I am, John. I can't just stop living for myself." He turned back to face me, his expression softening slightly. "I don't want you to give up on your dreams, Emma. But I don't know how much longer I can keep feeling like this, like I'm invisible next to you." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my heart was racing. "I'm not trying to make you feel invisible, John, but I can't stop working toward my goals. You can't expect me to just give up because it makes you uncomfortable." John seemed to collapse inwardly, the fight draining from him. "I don't know how to make sense of this," he said quietly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. You're getting everything you wanted, and I'm stuck here." I could see the confusion in his eyes, and it broke my heart. "You're not stuck, John. You just need to figure out what you want. I can't fix everything for you, but I will always support you in whatever you choose." There was a long silence between us, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I realized that we both had dreams, and it was time to stop letting resentment build up between us. We needed to find a way to move forward, together. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. There was no quick fix, no simple solution. But I couldn't keep dimming my light for his comfort. "I can't go backward, John," I said finally, my voice firm. "I need to keep going forward. For me, for us." He nodded slowly, his eyes weary. "I don't know if I can keep up with this, Emma." I reached out, taking his hand. "We'll figure it out, John. But you have to understand, I can't stop chasing my dreams." We stood there for a long moment, unsure of where to go next. But at least we were being honest with each other. It was a start, even if it didn't feel like a resolution yet. "Congratulations on your promotion," John said softly, his voice distant. "Thank you," I replied, my heart heavy. It wasn't the way I had envisioned sharing my success, but it was the reality of where we were now. The future was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stop working for my dreams. Wasn't going in the direction I had hoped. I had expected him to be happy for me, to celebrate this achievement with me, but instead, he seemed to be fixated on his own frustrations. The tone in his voice, the anger seeping through his words, made it clear that this wasn't about the promotion itself. It was about something deeper. His voice was rising as he continued, "You're always moving forward while I'm stuck. I've been working so hard, but nothing changes for me. Why can't we just have balance? Why can't I get a chance to move up too?" I felt the sting of his words. I had always supported him, encouraged him to pursue his own goals. Yet here he was, resenting my success. The disappointment in my chest was suffocating. "John," I said softly, "I'm not trying to leave you behind. I've worked hard for this. You know that. But I can't stop pushing forward just because it's uncomfortable for you." His eyes flashed with something I hadn't seen before, frustration mixed with a sense of being overlooked. "It's not about you pushing forward, Emma," he said, his voice growing harsher. "It's about you leaving me behind. It's about me feeling like I'm just here, stuck, while you get everything you want." My heart sank. Was this how he truly felt? I had always thought we were in this together, that we both had a shared vision of the future. But now, it seemed like my progress was something he could not reconcile with his own dissatisfaction. It felt like the foundation of our relationship was shaking. "I'm not leaving you behind, John," I said, stepping closer to him. "I've always wanted the best for us. I've never stopped supporting you, but I can't just stop living for my dreams because you feel stuck." He stood there, his arms crossed over his chest, and I could see the turmoil in his face. He wasn't angry with me. He was angry with himself. "It's just so unfair," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "Why do you get to have everything while I'm here, stuck?" I could feel the tears welling up, but I pushed them back. "It's not unfair, John. It's about working hard, setting goals, and pushing for the life we want. I'm not going to stop for anyone." His frustration bubbled over, and before I could say anything else, he snapped, "Maybe you're just too focused on your career to see what's really happening here. You don't understand how hard it is for me." I flinched at his words. How could he say that? How could he not see how much I was sacrificing too? But I realized, in that moment, that I had been so consumed by my own ambitions that I had neglected his feelings. I had been too focused on moving up in my career, and now it was all falling apart in front of me. "John," I said, my voice shaking, "I never meant to make you feel like this, but I can't stop moving forward. I've worked too hard for this." His expression softened for a moment, and he took a deep breath. "I know," he said quietly. I just wish we were both moving forward together." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I wish that too, John, but I can't hold back for anyone." We stood in silence for a long time, neither of us knowing what to say next. I felt guilty for not seeing the depth of his frustration, for not being more aware of the strain my success was putting on our relationship. And I realized deep down that our marriage was at a crossroads. We had to figure out how to navigate this growing divide between us. "I'm proud of you, Emma," John said finally, his voice quieter. "I just wish I could be where you are." I reached out, touching his arm gently. "We'll get there, John, together. But we have to support each other, and right now, we both need to find our own paths. We'll find balance, I promise." But as I stood there looking at him, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There were a lot of things we needed to work through, and I wasn't sure if we could bridge the gap between us. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to give up on my dreams. And I hoped that, eventually, John would find his own way too. It was a hard conversation, one that left me feeling uncertain about the future. But it was also one that we needed to have. It was time for us to be honest with each other, no matter how painful the truth was. And for me, that meant continuing to chase my goals, even if it meant navigating some difficult conversations along the way. Cold, and they were clearly feeling the consequences of their actions. I couldn't help but feel a certain satisfaction knowing they were stranded and panicking. As I looked at my phone, I could almost imagine the tension on the other end of the line as John struggled to salvage whatever he could from this mess. I decided to take my time before responding. This situation had turned into an absolute comedy, and I wasn't about to rush to help them. Instead, I took a deep breath, letting the silence linger a little longer before I finally replied. "Well, John, it seems like you're in quite a bind. If you want to get out of this situation, you're going to need more than just empty promises and gifts. You've already shown how easily you can make mistakes, and I'm not about to bail you out," I said, enjoying the fact that he was now on the other side of the conversation, helpless and desperate. John, clearly agitated, tried to reframe the situation again. "Look, Emma, I'm really sorry, okay? We just got caught up in things, and I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Can you just send us some money? I'll make it up to you." His words were full of desperation, but they didn't faze me. I knew exactly what he was trying to do: shift the blame, play the victim, and get out of the hole he had dug himself into. It was all too predictable. "No, John, I'm not sending you anything. You've had your chance, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences of your actions," I replied calmly, knowing that this was the turning point where everything would change. He couldn't manipulate me any longer. The game was over. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear him trying to come up with something, anything, to regain some control of the situation. But it was clear. He had no leverage left. Finally, I added, "You and Rachel really thought you could get away with this, didn't you? You should have known better, but now you'll have to face the music." At that moment, I felt the power shift completely. John, who had been so smug and controlling, was now on the defensive, pleading for help. But I had already made my decision. It was too late for him to change my mind. I ended the call and set the phone down, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. This was a turning point for me. I had finally stood up for myself and called out the manipulation for what it was. John and Rachel had thought they could pull one over on me, but they were wrong. Their plans had been exposed for what they truly were: self-serving and dishonest. I didn't have time for that kind of drama anymore. I had my own goals, my own life to live. And now, with the clarity that came from knowing I was no longer at their mercy, I felt stronger than ever. The next step was clear. I wasn't going to fall into the trap of their empty promises and desperate pleas. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and that didn't include helping John or his sister. It was time to move on and focus on my own future, one that didn't involve cleaning up their messes. With that, I turned my attention back to the plans Ryan and I had made. It was time to move forward, to take control of the situation, and to ensure that from now on, no one would be able to manipulate me again. The world was full of opportunities, and I was no longer going to let anyone stand in my way. I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't experienced in a long time. The people who had tried to bring me down had failed. And in the end, it was their own mistakes, their own arrogance, that had led to their downfall. Had the idea to take the money from you? "You don't know what you're talking about." She tried to defend herself, her voice growing defensive and shaky, but I wasn't having it anymore. I calmly looked at her, unwavering in my stance. "Rachel, don't try to twist the truth now. You were a part of this just as much as John was. You were complicit in everything, and now it's time to face the consequences." Rachel's face flushed with anger, and she started to stammer, unable to find words that would help her escape the situation. I could see the weight of reality crashing down on them, their well-laid plans unraveling with every passing moment. They had thought they were in control, that they could manipulate and deceive their way to success, but it was clear now that they were the ones who had been played. Ryan stood silently beside me, his presence a silent reinforcement of my strength and resolve. He knew this had been coming all along. Together, we had outsmarted John and Rachel, turning their own game against them. I was no longer the victim of their schemes. I was in control now. John tried once again to regain his composure, his hands trembling as he attempted to hide his anxiety. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice wavering. "You don't understand. I was just trying to make everything work. We were trying to move forward." I didn't let him finish. "No, John. You were trying to manipulate me, and now you're paying the price. The money, the lies, and the betrayal. It all ends here. You'll pay your debts, and I'll make sure you don't get away with anything. The divorce is happening, and I'm making sure it's done right." Rachel's expression was a mix of shock and disbelief as she stood there, unable to come up with any more excuses. It was over for them, and there was no way to hide from the truth anymore. They had underestimated me, thought they could control the situation, but now they were facing the harsh reality of their actions. John opened his mouth to speak again, but Ryan cut him off. "Enough, John. You've had your chance to make things right, and now it's too late." His voice was calm but authoritative, a clear indication that there was no turning back now. I looked at Rachel one last time. "You'll pay the money back, every cent, and you'll do it on time, or there will be further consequences." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled in. John and Rachel were defeated. There was nothing left to say. I turned to Ryan, nodding my approval, knowing that we had won. It was over. With a final glance at the two of them, I made my way to the door. "This is your last warning," I said, my voice steady. "Get your things together and make sure you take care of your responsibilities. Don't think for a second that I'll let you off the hook." As I stepped out, I could hear John and Rachel exchanging words behind me, but I didn't care anymore. Their words no longer held power over me. They had tried to take everything, but now I was in control of my own life, and I would never let them manipulate me again. The game was over, and I had won. A new place of my own, and was finally free from the toxic environment they had created. The decision to let go of them and everything that tied me to that part of my life was liberating. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate, and I was no longer shackled by the deceit and manipulation I had endured for so long. I took a deep breath as I looked out the window of my new home, the fresh start I had been working towards for so long. The weight that had once pressed on my chest had lifted, and I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. It was clear to me now that all the pain and heartache I had endured had been a catalyst for this new chapter in my life. It had pushed me to take control, to rise above the situation, and to move forward with my own strength. As time went on, I focused on rebuilding my career and investing in my future. The promotion at work, which had once felt like a distant dream, had set the stage for the next phase of my professional journey. I was no longer bogged down by personal drama, and my newfound clarity allowed me to excel in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Every achievement felt sweeter now, as it was all mine, earned through hard work, determination, and resilience. Meanwhile, John and Rachel seemed to be spiraling. Their relationship with each other remained strained, and their attempts to win me back fell flat. I didn't waste any more energy on them. They had their chance, and now it was my turn to focus on my happiness and my future. Ryan and I continued to build our own life together, free from the toxicity that had once threatened to consume us. He remained my steadfast partner, and our bond grew stronger with every passing day. We had learned from the past, and now we were focused on making our own dreams a reality side by side. Looking back, I knew I had made the right decision. I had cut off all the negativity, and in doing so, I had found peace. The house, the money, the endless manipulation, it was all behind me now. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. With each new day, I moved forward, embracing the opportunities ahead and leaving the past where it belonged. In the past. The life I was building was mine, and I was determined to make the most of it, surrounded by those who truly valued and respected me. The chapter with John and Rachel was over, and I was finally free. I had finally achieved the position I had worked so hard for, regional director. It was a milestone that had been a long time coming, and it felt every bit as rewarding as I had imagined. At the same time, Ryan and I had grown closer, drawn together by an undeniable ease and understanding. We had gone out several times, and to my surprise, everything between us felt natural, uncomplicated in the best way. Life after the divorce had been a revelation. Every passing day reaffirmed that I had made the right choice. As for what happened between Ryan and me, well, that's a story for another time.